Hello everybody. Welcome to episode 2 of our Vespa project. If you remember last time we gave a general look at our barn find Vespa, kind of took a look at the general condition and how everything was kind of nice and free on it and looked pretty promising. So today we're going to go a little further, start taking things apart and seeing if we can get this running. One thing we noticed last week was that the choke was nice and free, but we noticed the hole right here, which is not good, because there should be a fuel valve lever coming out of that hole. So we're going to have a little work to do on the fuel system. The fuel tank, we took a peek inside. It's very rusty, but it seems to be solid. So we're going to see if we can salvage that. There were no bolts holding it down. And the gasket looks like it's about had it. And you get a little surprise here. This should have had a fuel valve with a sediment bowl that acts like a fuel filter. And there must have been some problem with that. It looks like somebody has nicely brazed in a washer and brazed in a short piece of copper pipe. So that might be something that we can use for a short while. But if we're going to restore this, we're going to need to get that out of there and install the right fuel valve. Okay. So, let's take a look and see if we have any spark. First, I want to show you what we did discover, that the motor is actually free. And that's great. A lot of times when we start on a project like this that has been sitting in a barn for a long time, the motor's actually stuck, and the first step is lots of penetrating oil and patience to try to get things freed up. So we've got a head start. We've got a motor that turns over. We've got a boot on the spark plug here. We'll take that off and see if we can get the spark plug out of it. Okay, that's spark plug, at least 35 years old. Looks a little dirty, but not unusable. So we're going to set this on the head. Now, if you try this at home, make sure you don't touch any of the metal parts of the plug, because if everything's working, you're going to get a terrible shock. But we'll try kicking that over. Look at that. No battery. It's a magneto type machine, but even after setting all those years, we've not only got a spark, we've got a nice bright fat spark. So that's very promising. If we can get some gas flowing to this machine, we might have a running motorcycle. We're going to just stick this back in here loose so we don't drop something into the cylinder. And we'll get some light on the subject. Now, I would not attempt to try to run gas into this carburetor. Setting the number of years that it's been setting, we're sure that it's dirty and plugged up. So let's take that carburetor off, and maybe next time we will clean that up and get it back on there. So let's get a little light on the subject, get up where you can see that. Okay, we've got a, look like a intake hose to the air cleaner, air box that's all rotten, so we'll have to try to source one of those. We did find out, if you remember last time, we talked about finding out what year it was. We discovered that on some scooters from this era, the serial number is actually on the left-hand side, way down underneath where that cowling bolt's on. So we cleaned that up with a little WD-40 and a rag, and sure enough, there's a good readable serial number. We discovered this is actually a 1964 model VNB, which is a 125cc Vespa. Also, we learned that something about the color. Growing up, I remember the Vespas from the 70s being very brightly colored, so we kind of assumed that maybe this was just in gray primer waiting for paint. Well, it turns out that these Vespas were only offered in gray and beige. So this is probably an original paint machine. Unfortunately, it's in such bad shape that if we decide to fully restore it, we probably are going to want to take it down to bare metal and repaint it. But let's get going on that carburetor. Looks like it's inside this nice little box here. It's held on by 2 screws. So let's see if we can get those out. Alright, those are the same size, so I don't have to worry about mixing those up. Anytime you take something like this apart, if you have different length screws, you want to keep them labeled or separate so they go back in the right position. And we'll give that a little tap. Get off. And what have we got? Looks like a nice little carburetor with a little air filter. Appears as though the fuel line comes in here to the carb, and other attachment points. Let's see, we've got a choke lever, operates there, and the throttle. So these are both going to be unhooked, and the fuel line before we take the carburetor off. Let's get that air cleaner out of the way and see what else we've got. I'm going to let those bolts stay right in there so I don't lose them. Nice little cute little air cleaner. Set that aside. And there we can see the throat of the carb. It looks as if these are probably the hold down nuts. But while it's still mounted solidly, let's try to get everything unhooked from it. Instead of trying to get the hose off the fuel line, let's take this banjo bolt here. I'm going to try to save these gaskets. I'm going to order a gasket kit, but just in case, you always want to save what you can. That's loose, so that'll pull away and let the carburetor out. Now the throttle, we'll get a little tricky here if we can. We'll try turning the throttle so that extends that. We'll clamp it with these needle nose pliers, and we'll roll the throttle back. You can see that cable coming loose, and if we can just push that out of the way, maybe. Voila. Alright. Now that just leaves the choke. Let's pull the choke lever out. If we can get a screwdriver position to hold that without damaging it, we'll push the choke lever back in. Okay, that didn't work. Let's try it again. Choke lever out. Hold it in position. And there we go. That's all. Things are coming apart pretty nicely for a machine this old that's been setting for so long. Alright. I don't see anything else that would prevent the carburetor from coming out, so let's try these nuts. Now, anytime you're working on anything this old, if it doesn't want to come, don't force it. Penetrating oil and patience are the key, but in this case, that's going to let go. That one's going to let go. So, okay. Let's lift those out carefully. Once again, we'll make sure they're the same so we don't mix them up if they're different. Looks like we've got a lock washer Set that one in the front in case it's a different size. Oops, it's loose already. Great. So we're going to have to wiggle that. Nice and easy. Okay, these are both the same, so we'll just set those together right there. Looks like we've got some dirt down there. That gasket's in kind of rough shape. I've read that these are rotary valve two-strokes, and I never knew what that meant. But as we rotate this, you can kind of see that opening? So apparently there's a disc in there that rotates and opens at the correct time to let the fuel-air mixture in. So that's pretty neat. Let's leave that in the closed position so no dirt gets in there. Take a good look at our little carburetor here. Looks nice and dirty. Washer. It just came off from somewhere. Okay. So let's set that down with this. Alright. We're going to put that on the bench. And in our next installment, we will take that, disassemble that, clean it up, and see if we can get this thing running. In the meantime, if you enjoy this sort of thing and would like to see more of it, give us a thumbs up. Don't be afraid to put some stuff in the comments section. Maybe you can give us some tips. Some of you probably worked on these more than I have. And share it with your friends if you like it. Consider subscribing. So that's about it for this week. And in the meantime, take care, God bless, and happy trails.